This is Simplified Life.
Let's get one thing straight. Jeffrey Epstein's files exist, and Donald Trump? He's not just circling the perimeter, he's in them. You heard that right. While media pundits danced around his name, flight logs, testimonies, photographs, they don't lie. Trump has long claimed, I had a falling out with Epstein. Let's rewind. How does a man like Jeffrey Epstein, who never finished college, get hired to teach mathematics and physics at one of the most prestigious private schools in America? The answer, Donald Barr, the headmaster of the Dalton School. He gave Epstein that job, no degree, no credentials, just a gut instinct. Donald Barr also happened to be the author of a sci-fi novel about child sex slavery in outer space. Now hold on to that name, because it's going to come up again. Fast forward to 2019, Jeffrey Epstein dies in a federal prison under one of the most suspicious circumstances in American history. And who was the Attorney General of the United States, the man who signed off on Epstein's death as a suicide? William Barr, Donald Barr's son, the same family who gave Epstein his first professional job, closed the book on his last breath. What are the odds? A man born into mystery, buried by the son of the man who opened his first door. That's not coincidence. That's a circle, and that circle protects itself. The idea that Epstein was just a pedophile is the distraction. He was a honeypot, a weapon used to gather compromise on powerful men across the globe. He ran surveillance, not just with cameras in his homes, but through his entire social web. And what agency has long been linked to this method of operation? Mossad. Leslie Wexner, the billionaire who essentially gave Epstein his $77 million mansion, has deep Israeli intelligence ties. Robert Maxwell, Ghislaine's father, also linked to Mossad. Coincidence? Again, follow the trails. Money, power, state influence, surveillance. This wasn't about sex, it was about control. The missing footage, the quiet judges, the outrage that never was. When Epstein allegedly died, the cameras glitched, the guards were asleep, the logs were gone. What's the likelihood of that happening? Twice? The July 23rd incident where he was found unconscious, deleted. The final moments before his death, gone. The footage from the hallway disappeared. Where's the outrage? Why aren't Apple, Google or the media demanding the footage? Why is no one asking about the executors of his will? Why is no one interviewing the guards who found him? Because justice was never the goal. Silence was. The real questions. Why was Epstein's body removed from the scene against protocol? Why did he have wounds on both front and back of his neck, suggesting wire strangulation, not bedsheet hanging? Why did both guards get out on $100,000 bail? Who are the prisoners Epstein was paying inside for protection and favours? Where is the non-location disclosing footage of him being moved? And here's the bigger question. If Epstein wasn't the brain, who was? Trump, Jared, and the art of distraction. Donald Trump's silence is not innocence, it's protection. Candace Owens raised this first, loud and clear. She asked the questions no one else would touch. Why was Trump once close with Epstein, then suddenly became anti-Epstein when the media got involved? Why is Jared Kushner, with billions from Saudi deals, being treated like a clean prince? Why did Bill Barr shut down the investigations the moment things got too close? You don't have to name names to shield people. You just have to shut the door and say, nothing to see here. That's what's happening. And the American people feel it. Part 6, Harvard, elite institutions and the real cleanup. Let's talk about Harvard. Why did they keep Epstein's $9 million donation even after the scandal broke? Why did they hide the documents of his connection with their departments? Why did MIT Media Lab accept his donations under aliases? Why did his connections with theoretical physics departments remain untouched? Because Epstein was the middleman, the face of a network that never needed a face. So where did the approximately $577 million go after his death? Who are the unnamed creditors? And is this the same $570 million fortune of Robert Maxwell, his partner's father? These are the questions no one's answering because the answers are inconvenient and they expose everyone. So let me say this again. The files exist. The media just won't show you. The cameras were rolling. The servers were storing the silence. It was planned. Epstein was a key to a lock that's still very much shut. And no matter how many doors you close, no matter how many servers you wipe, truth doesn't disappear. It multiplies. And eventually it gets loud. This is simplified life. We are not here to be silent. We are here to remember what they want us to forget.
In 1953, Epstein was born. Then in 1980, he became an LP at Bear Stearns. In 1991, Leslie Wexner granted him full power of attorney over his affairs. Also in 91, Robert Maxwell died with his stolen $570 million fortune in pension funds. In 95, Ghislaine Maxwell became Epstein's best friend and began creating playbooks for procuring girls. In 2001, Virginia Roberts Giuffre was trafficked to Prince Andrew. From 2002 to 2004, Epstein was moving tens of millions of dollars. He began funding heterodox science, and this even includes the former Israeli Prime Minister Ehud Barak. And in 2005, evidence finally arose of pedophilia, and that very quickly snowballed into 50-plus women. His lawyer, Alan Dershowitz, who Virginia says she was trafficked to at least 6 times, the earliest when she was 16, helped negotiate the deal of a lifetime for Epstein. He ended up only pleading guilty to a state charge of procuring for prostitution a girl below age 18. How did our justice system produce such a careless result which essentially shut down an ongoing FBI probe into whether there were more victims and other powerful people who took part in Epstein's sex crimes?
Again. Fast forward to 2019, Jeffrey Epstein dies in a federal prison under one of the most suspicious circumstances in American history. And who was the Attorney General of the United States, the man who signed off on Epstein's death as a suicide? William Barr, Donald Barr's son, the same family who gave Epstein his first professional job, closed the book on his last breath. What are the odds? A man born into mystery, buried by the son of the man who opened his first door. That's not coincidence, that's a circle. And that circle protects itself. Epstein didn't just move through elite circles, he was placed in them from Dalton to Bear Stearns, where he went from math teacher to money manager. Alan Greenberg, CEO, gave him a shot, again with zero formal training. We keep calling this luck. It's not luck, it's grooming. Epstein's rise had help, strategic hands, moving pieces behind the scenes. Because Epstein wasn't just a predator, he was a weapon, used to gather compromise, to run surveillance, to control. The homes, the jets, the islands, they weren't just playgrounds, they were traps. Traps for power, traps for secrets. Like the MLK files nobody asked for, just remember. The silence around Epstein is the loudest admission of guilt you'll ever hear. They're not hiding him. They're hiding themselves. But we see you, we remember, and we speak, because if they won't show us the files, we'll be the voice that makes them impossible to forget.
All right, back we come to the timeline. As you remember, after the evidence of pedophilia surfaced in 2005 and snowballed into 50-plus women, in 2008, when Alan Dershowitz negotiated the deal of a lifetime, when Alexander Acosta is told to leave it alone, and how Epstein served just 13 months. From 2010 to 2019, there have been this myriad of lawsuits against Epstein and Maxwell being settled for undisclosed sums outside of court. In 2010, Prince Andrew visited Epstein in New York City after Epstein had served a sentence and had all of the pedophilia records exposing him. In 2015, Virginia Roberts Giuffre exposes Jean-Luc Brunel's MC2 modeling agency as sex traffickers to Jeffrey Epstein. Also in 2015, ABC News interviews Virginia and the royal family threatens ABC. In 2016, WikiLeaks publishes John Podesta's emails allegedly containing pedophilia code words. Alright, on to our next section. After being found unconscious, 6 days later taken off suicide watch, signing his last will the day before, 2 cameras malfunctioning, 2 guards falling asleep at their desks, the most prolific pedophile on trial in the United States manages to get away without justice. Nicholas Tartaglione was Epstein's cellmate who was threatened by jail guards to stop talking after describing Epstein's death and conditions to the media. It goes without a doubt that Nicholas should be extensively interviewed, and so should the 3 executors listed on Epstein's last will, Darren K. Indyke, Richard D. Kahn, and Boris Nikolic. Where is Epstein's trust agreement document that was not attached to the will? The footage from the July 23rd incident of Epstein being found unconscious was claimed in January 2020 to be permanently deleted due to a clerical error. Epstein was reportedly depositing funds into prisoners' accounts to gain favors and buy protection. Epstein's left and right thyroid cartilage was fractured, and his hyoid bone was broken, which is said to be more indicative of strangulation than suicide. The blood on Epstein's neck was absent on the bed sheets. The front and back lesions on his neck are more evident of a wire/cord from his CPAP machine than a strip of bedsheet. Guards say they cut him down. But from what? The top bunk? Could someone actually hang themselves this way? The 2 guards are Tova Noel and Michael Thomas, who need to tell us the exact body position when they first encountered him. The noose looks like it's still hemmed. What tool did they use to cut the noose? They took his body out of the cell against protocol. It was a crime scene. If this wasn't a suicide, who, how, and why did someone sneak in for this homicide? What time did Epstein's camera start malfunctioning? Even if the cameras malfunctioned in front of his cell, how about other footage from inside the cell block area to see if anyone else potentially entered? It is said he was buried on September 5, 2019 in Palm Beach next to his parents in an unmarked grave to prevent vandalism. I'm curious which medications exist that can send him into a coma for a month and then for him to be dug out of his grave and resuscitated. How did Tova Noel and Michael Thomas, who failed to do their 30-minute checks on Epstein, each finance their $100,000 bail? I'd place mandatory lifelong financial oversights on their accounts and Warden Lamin Ndiaye, medical examiner Barbara Sampson, and their families to make sure they don't get heavily compensated in the next decades for this. They must all be extensively investigated. We know one thing for sure. A lot of powerful people are trying to get out of this situation without... Okay, as you remember, we left off in 2016 where WikiLeaks publishes John Podesta's emails allegedly containing pedophilia code words. Now we come up to July 6, 2019, when Jeffrey Epstein is arrested on sex trafficking charges. Then we move to July 23rd of 2019, where an Epstein is found unconscious in his cell. This is the footage that was deleted due to clerical error. Then we move to July 29th, 2019, when Epstein is taken off suicide watch. Who is responsible for that decision? Then we move to August 8th, 2019, when Epstein signs his last will and testament, literally a day and a half before his death. On August 9th, 2019, Epstein's cellmate is transferred out and no replacement cellmate is brought in. On August 10th, 2019, 2 cameras malfunction, 2 guards fall asleep, and Epstein is found dead in his cell at 6:30 a.m. From August through October 2019, the medical examiner says it's a suicide, Michael Baden says it's a homicide, and Epstein is buried in Palm Beach. On to November 2019, when Project Veritas releases the ABC News hot mic, Prince Andrew gives the BBC interview, and Michael Thomas and Tova Noel are each released on a $100,000 bail. And on to 2020, where Ghislaine Maxwell and Jean-Luc Brunel are still in hiding. We have now experienced the coronavirus pandemic, and there are few efforts by intelligence and journalism communities to get to the truth. And those neck lesions especially make it pretty evident to me, from what I can tell, that it is by an electrical cord, likely from the CPAP machine. And I assign currently, given the date of publication of this investigative documentary, that the probability of this branch of the decision tree is approximately 60%. Now, if we backpedal a bit, I do think that it's possible that they still had this big homicide plan, but rather than it being a jail employee, it could have been a jail inmate that's also in on it, or I think it's also possible, maybe a little bit less likely, that somebody came in from outside the jail letting in this assassin, and the assassin did this. And that where is, again, any of the camera footage that we've been asking for from all of the other cameras inside of the jail that are not the 2 that they claim malfunctioned. All right, and the second highest probability, which I'm ascribing approximately 25% to, is the suicide branch. And the suicide branch has a 20% probability that it's a hanging by the CPAP electrical cord from the bunk. And again, that's because of the neck lesions. I think it's much more likely that than it is a hanging by bed sheets, a bedsheet noose from the bunk. I ascribe about 5% to that. And then on the alive branch, I ascribe approximately 3% to him putting himself into a coma and then being dug up or not even buried. And those neck lesions especially make it pretty evident to me, from what I can tell, that it is by an electrical cord, likely.
We all have opinions. Some are whispered at dinner tables, others shouted from platforms, but occasionally a voice cuts through the noise. Not because it holds all the answers, but because it asks the questions we're not allowed to. Here's Joe Rogan saying what millions are thinking, but few dare to say out loud.
Epstein case is probably the most blatant example of a public murder of a crucial witness I've ever seen in my entire life, or anybody's ever seen. This is one of those things that's so obvious, it's so in everyone's face,
Where was Ghislaine Maxwell's passport last seen? Why are we not talking to Les Wexner? Where are the trading records? What is the source of the fortune? It seems to me very clear that we have a missing fortune of Robert Maxwell and an unexplained fortune of Jeffrey Epstein. Are those the same fortune? Who's asking these questions? Did everybody go to sleep when they taught journalism in school? I just don't understand.
Ever learned about COINTELPRO was because of a citizens commission that smelled something fishy about our own FBI killing citizens that were challenging the status quo, so they broke into an FBI building, stole over 1,000 classified documents, and published them through news outlets. Do you see the extent to which we as the general public have to fight to get root? Are calling it out as it is. Syrian President Bashar al-Assad said,
يعني الملياردير الأمريكي جيفري إبستاين قتل منذ أسابيع وقالوا بأنه انتحر في السجن وهو قتل لأنه يحمل أسرار هامة جدا تتعلق بشخصيات هامة في المنظومة أو في النظام الأمريكي والبريطاني وربما في دول.
So if Trump was in the files, if he walked among the predators, who exactly was he protecting? And why does his silence sound like complicity? He promised exposure. He gave us silence. And that silence wasn't accidental. It was strategic. Let's rewind to 2015. Trump was privately made aware that his name appeared in relation to Epstein through lawyers connected to Virginia Giuffre, through whispers from legal teams, and according to insiders, even Ken Bondi, associated with Jack Scarola and others, flagged the issue early. Trump knew his name was in the air, and suddenly he's out front, demanding the Epstein list be released, framing himself as the exposer. But here's the catch. It wasn't full transparency. It was damage control, because Trump may not have known the depth of what was coming. Epstein wasn't just a rich pervert. He was a broker of secrets. And Trump's ties to him run deeper than a casual photo. He partied with Epstein at Mar-a-Lago. He hosted events where underage girls were recruited. He publicly admitted Jeffrey likes beautiful women, many of them on the younger side. Now enter Jared Kushner, Trump's son-in-law, senior advisor, and the man who, after leaving the White House, received $2 billion from Saudi Arabia's sovereign wealth fund. No experience, no expertise, no justification. And his family? Not squeaky clean. Jared's father, Charles Kushner, was convicted and imprisoned not just for tax evasion and illegal political donations, but for one of the most shocking acts of blackmail in US political history. Charles Kushner hired a prostitute to seduce his own brother-in-law, secretly recorded the act in a hotel room, then mailed the tape to his own sister, all to intimidate her from testifying in court. This isn't tabloid fiction. This is in federal records. That's the kind of man who raised Jared. That's the empire Jared married into. That's the legacy that helped shape Trump's foreign policy. And now Jared walks away from public service into billions, while survivors of Epstein's ring are still ignored. Ask yourself, who's really being protected? Let's not forget the others. Prince Andrew photographed with Virginia Giuffre. Bill Clinton logged on Epstein's plane 26 plus times. Ehud Barak, Israeli ex-prime minister, photographed outside Epstein's NYC townhouse. Les Wexner, the billionaire who handed Epstein a mansion for free. Robert Maxwell, Ghislaine's father, tied to Israeli intelligence. Stephen Hoffenberg, who sued Epstein, calling him the architect of financial fraud, and now Trump's in the mix. So why the silence? Because this isn't just a scandal. It's a network of politicians, of royalty, of tech giants, intelligence agencies, real estate dynasties, and media handlers. A global blackmail operation built on trafficked girls, sealed files, and compromised power. You think Trump was different? He wasn't. He was inside the house before he ever pointed fingers at the window. This is not left versus right. This is not Republican versus Democrat. This is elites versus accountability. And Epstein, he was their fixer until he wasn't. And now that he's gone, the game is silence. They dropped the MLK files no one asked for. They stalled the JFK files, Trump promise. They fed us alien speculation but erased the Epstein flight logs you're supposed to forget. But this is simplified life, and we're not just remembering, we're documenting, because justice delayed is justice denied.